This is going to be an unscripted video showing how to be able to texture mod in DmC Devil May Cry. You're going to need two pieces of software, one being TextMod, which is free to use. I'll supply a link to it in the description below. You're also going to need some type of photo editor that can read TGA files. That's T as in Tom, G as in Gary, and A as in Apple. I'll be using Photoshop in this case, but feel free to use whatever you want to. I obviously can't supply a link to Photoshop for reasons. So once you have TextMod open here, you're going to want to click on this folder on the top left and navigate over to your DmC Devil May Cry executable. If you don't know where that is, if you go to your Steam library, wherever that is, Steam Apps, Common, DmC Devil May Cry, I'm going to go to Binaries, Win32, and then the executable is right here. So by clicking on this, we're done with that step. You'll notice three tabs here on TextMod: Package Mode, Logging Mode, and Package Build. We'll discuss them all later, or in the future, but let's first go over Logging Mode. So in Logging Mode, this is what's going to allow us to be able to extract textures from the game. So basically, copy the things that I have here, and I'll point out some especially important ones. Replacing texture with a green texture is important. I'll explain what that is later. Keep the output format at TGA. This button here, this drop-down menu, I should say, is the key that you will select on your keyboard to be able to extract the texture. So in this case, I'm just using Enter, but feel free to change it to whatever you want to. It looks like you're only given the F buttons anyway, so it's either Enter or the F keys. And then the output folder is where your textures are going to be saved after you extract them. So in this case, I already have it set. Feel free to change it to what you want to, and then you can just select Run. And this will run the game in logging mode. And you know the game will be in logging mode, because you will see red text on the top left corner of your screen. You might not be able to see what it reads on my end, depending on how clear the video is, but it essentially says press plus and minus to select the texture and Enter to save it. That will make more sense once we actually load into something. So let's load into training mode. So if I press the plus and minus keys on my keyboard, you'll notice on the top left a variety of different pictures are appearing on screen. Sometimes not on the top left, but general idea. These are the textures in the game. So you can see there's the loading symbol. Let's see what else. More loading symbols, words, right, to represent the text that appears in the main menu. And even Dante's trench coat, which we'll be extracting in this case to texture mod. So in order to actually load in the textures that you want to, you need to make sure that you select the mission that you want to extract textures from. It's not going to load all the textures in the entire game by default when you load the game into logging mode. It's only going to load in whatever it sees on screen. So in this case, we only went to the menu and went into training mode. So all the textures that are in the menu and training mode is all we're going to get. If you want any other textures, you have to load in the different mission. So let's go ahead and find, I said Dante's trench coat, but we'll see if I can find something even easier to use. We'll see. I don't know. Now, there are 1,000 textures loaded, as you can see, so it might take some time. I might just fast forward the video until I actually find it. Okay, it took a while, but I finally found Dante's trench coat. It's a pretty big texture. Here's his face, if you want to give him a mustache or something. But here it is. So I have the Enter key selected as my key to be able to extract textures from. So I'm simply going to press the Enter key on my keyboard, and the texture should be extracted. And I can double check to be sure by alt-tabbing and going into that folder. Hello, this is me from the future. I forgot to mention a very important detail. So, if you remember, I asked you guys to make sure that you select the checkbox that said to make textures green. The reason that's important is because the texture in-game will actually highlight a green color, indicating that you selected the proper texture. So, if I were to find a texture that actually matches on screen, notice here, for example, if you look on the right side where you see all the list of moves, if I were to toggle between two textures here, you notice that the textures interchange between a green color, a dark green color, I should say, and the actual texture itself. That's because we've selected the texture that is actually loaded into the game. This is true for any texture that you see. So if you actually want to be sure that you grab the right texture that you want to modify, just look at the texture in-game and see if it matches a green color. And if it does, then you've grabbed the right texture. And if not, then, well, you gotta keep looking. So in this case here, I've actually selected the floor. And you can tell I selected the floor because the whole floor is now highlighted green. So this gives me a good indication that I've selected the texture that I would like to mod if, for example, I wanted to mod the floor in this level. Just un momento, let's see. Games, DmC, out. And there we go. There's the texture right here, as you can see. So, now that we have the texture, we can now go into Photoshop. We're going to go ahead and load it up here. And load in the texture into Photoshop. I can go ahead and close the game. We have everything that we need now. I'm essentially just going to drag in that file into Photoshop here. Oh god, please. Thank you. Drag it over. And there we go. There's Dante's trench coat. This isn't going to be a tutorial on how to be able to use Photoshop or any photo editor. I'm going to make the assumption that you know how to be able to use that sort of thing. We're just going to add some goofy stuff just to be sure that we actually know that the texture was edited correctly. Let's just make his trench coat red. That sounds good to me. So I'm going to choose the red color in Photoshop here. Use the brush tool. That's fine by me. Let's make the brush really big just to be able to get through this quicker. Okay, and now I'm just going to make it red. Now, obviously, if you want to be able to change the color, you don't want to do something like this because you're removing all the little scuffs that you can see inside of Photoshop here. All these little crevices and little details inside the trench coat itself, you're losing when you just make it pure red. So if you want to be able to actually change the color, you want to be able to use some variation of a hue and saturation. But in this case, we just want to be sure that we get a noticeable difference when we load it into the game. So just gonna go around here. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so this looks awful, obviously, but you know, we're just doing this for example purposes. So once you're actually done texture modding and you make something significantly better than what I have, you want to go into File and Save As, and you want to save it as a TGA file, the same format that we extracted from. So I'm just going to overwrite the file in this case here, and boom, that's done. Okay, so now at this point, we can now go into the second tab, or another tab of TextMod called Package Build, which essentially allows us to be able to build the texture and load it into the game. So if you notice, inside of the folder that you specified where the textures would be extracted from in the game, you'll notice a log file here. This log file just simply contains the path to the texture. Now, I have multiple similar paths here. I think it's because I was doing multiple examples, but this doesn't matter. Just essentially just to let you know, this log file just contains the path to the texture. So it's important to not modify this unless you move the textures into a different folder after you extract the log file. But we're going to go into package build here in the text mod and make sure that the path is correct. This path here is just the path to the log file itself, right? Which is correct here in this case. And then we can add our name because we're the ones who created the mod. I'm DmC, and I'll just make a comment saying red trench coat default costume. Really bad. LOL. Okay, so once we do that, we can click on the build button. This will build the file. There we go. Oh, actually, I just realized something important to note. Notice how it says 4 textures added. That's because the log found 4 duplicate paths to the same texture. Now, this isn't something that you're going to have to worry about as long as you don't do what I was doing and just continuously overwrite the file as you're extracting. But we only need 1 path to it. It shouldn't matter. Actually, it should look fine in game anyway, but you know, that bothers me, so I'm going to change it. We'll just call this text file, or this TPF file, I should say, red. And that's it. The mod is now created. So now we can go into the final tab we haven't discussed yet, package mode, which allows us to be able to import in our new textures. If you click on this folder here, the new texture should be here by default, but if not, you can browse to it and find it. So we're going to click on red and just run the game. And that's it. As long as I made sure to grab the right texture, we should see that Dante's trench coat is like a pure solid red. So we just gotta wait and see. There we go. Game's in. Going to training mode. And yeah, as you can see, it worked. The bottom of the trench coat is red. It doesn't actually look as bad as I thought. You can actually still see the rough marks on it, but I probably prefer using hue and saturation over just painting it red. Although it doesn't look too bad, actually. Doesn't look too bad at all. If I actually finished it, it would be decent. But that's basically it. So keep in mind that when you're actually importing in textures, you do have to load in TextMod every single time you want to use textures. So you can't just like run it once and then just continuously run the game without text mod. You always need text mod to run in order to actually get this to work. But again, that's basically it. So if you have any questions, feel free to message me in the comments below. Yeah, that's it for me. Take care, guys.